you just love that hymn? I think it's one of my favorites, Because He Lives by Bill and Gloria Gaither. It comes around every Easter and a lot of times in between because it has such a great message, such a biblical message, in fact. If we look at it, that first verse about God sending his son, he came to love, heal, and give. We see that through the Gospels, what Jesus did. But he lived and died to buy our pardon so that we wouldn't have to live with the penalty of the sins that we commit or the sin that we're born with. But it goes on that an empty grave is there to prove that he lives. So because he lives, that's one of the point of the hymn. We can face tomorrow. The Gaithers wrote this, though, back in 1971 in the height of the Vietnam War, and they had just had their first son when they wrote this song. In fact, I think it may be what inspired them to write it. But that second verse talks about that. How sweet to hold a newborn baby and feel the pride and joy he gives, but greater still the calm assurance this child can face uncertain days because Christ lives. In the midst of the Vietnam War and all the protests and all those things going on, I'm sure it felt like very uncertain days. And to have a child, to raise a child in those days would have had to have been difficult. But think of where we are today with this pandemic, this COVID pandemic, COVID-19. The uncertainty that we experience, whether we'll have a job tomorrow, of course military not so much a problem, but spouses, but family members, with places closing down, not being able to work, with stores not being able to keep a lot of things in stock, with having to stay away from other people, not being groups, a lot of uncertainty. I would say that these are uncertain days. But just as God inspired the Gaithers back in the 70s to write this from Scripture, we can be inspired in the same way. We can have that calm assurance that we can face uncertain days because Christ lives. So whatever we're facing, whatever we're going through, whatever turmoil that this crisis is causing us now, we can know that because Christ lives, because Jesus lives, that we can face tomorrow. We can face whatever's coming. We can face whatever this pandemic or anything else that may come our way. We can face it because Christ lives. Listen to that last hymn, and I'm not going to sing it for you, don't worry. But the last verse of this hymn. And then one day I'll cross the river. I'll fight life's final war with pain. And then as death gives way to victory, I'll see the lights of glory, and I'll know he lives. So one day, it won't just be by faith that we know he lives. It won't be just by the experience of having him help us through these difficult times, but it will be by sight, by physical contact, by his physical presence that we will know without a doubt that Jesus lives. So if you can't experience that right now, if you can't know his presence, his goodness, his comfort, his help in these times of crisis, I encourage you to turn to him, to look to him, to depend on him. Because he lives, you can face tomorrow.